Amendment proposed after clause 88, insert the following new clause as printed on the marshalled list.
My Lords, I'd like to give a very warm welcome to these amendments from the Noble Viscount Younger, and I actually appreciated the detail that he went into, because I think it's important for us to remember that these direct deduction orders are real instruments of power, and I'm interested in how they will be used differentially, because I don't want them to be a blunt instrument. And I think that therefore to consider who might be on the receiving end of them is worth remembering. In an earlier group, when we were discussing search and seizure, I had been considering speaking, but was in some ways put off, because I thought, these search and seizure measures are only meant for organised criminal gangs. But as was pointed out, maybe if that was on the face of the bill, that would be more reassuring, because it is difficult how many people will be affected by the same powers. And we do want to differentiate, surely, between the vulnerable and an organised criminal gang, between those who are technically fraudulent because they've made a mistake, and so on. And I was particularly thought of that because I listened to one of those horrible, vividly documentaries recently about bailiffs and people who'd got themselves into all sorts of distress and debt and so on, and bailiffs kicking down the doors. And so I kind of had that caricature in my head, and I don't want that to happen to people who don't. I mean, I'm not suggesting the search and seizure measures are going to lead in that direction, but I think, therefore, we should always think who's on the receiving end of these powers and how do they get into that situation, and how does the bill make a distinction so that we haven't got a one-size-fits-all. On the other hand, and this is just a slight anxiety I have, I don't want us to also simply get into a situation where we say that because people are on welfare, they are vulnerable, because that's equally a caricature. And I don't think it's helpful for us to see people who are, always in a kind of victim role. But I would be interested, and that's why I welcome this group, to make the distinctions, or how the Minister envisages us making the distinctions of all the multitude of people on welfare when these powers, that are quite severe in many instances, going to be applied. How will that happen? Who makes the decision? And I think that's why these amendments are very useful.